Dr. Jazz.
Jump in. I've played with so many guys that you play with, and I've listened to you for 10 years since Big Eyes came out on Fresh Sound, I think it was.
Wow.
And
Cool.
you were like, Loren gave me, like, when we toured way back, I think one of the CDs that you guys did together by Bad Touch, I think it was, or was it your, yeah. And I followed you since then, and you've been incredibly busy the last 3 years despite the COVID and everything. And
Yes, yeah.
yeah,
It's hard to measure busyness anymore. What's the metric for busyness anymore? But
yeah,
it's nice to think that you're busy, so I appreciate the thought.
kind of looks like. No, but there are three things I want to talk about in the beginning. And first I want to dig into Puzzle People. And
thanks.
I love the writing. I mean, I've always loved your writing. And kind of, how did this one happen? And I know, with Adam, you've been connected for a long time, and Jay has been kind of mainstay of, I guess, Steeplechase Records also as a bass player. But how did this album happen?
Yeah, I started playing. I've played with Adam, as you kind of mentioned. I'll just kind of state it, and we started playing together in this band called the Lead Belly Project. Yeah. I'm sure you're familiar with that. It's a group with two guitars, saxophone, and Adam Nussbaum on drums. And so we've been playing for a few years. Jay, I think I first played with maybe on some record dates 10 years ago or something.
Oh, wow, already.
But I've been playing with him in various projects on and off over the years. We first played together as a trio at the 55 bar, the now, I don't know, Bars Don't Die, not deceased or whatever. I don't know what
yeah.
The now
closed.
Closed 55 bar. Very sad
to
even say that. Anyways, another sad thought is that I played with these guys subbing for the great Vic Juris, guitar player that I'm sure you know.
Sure.
He had a steady Sunday night gig once a month at the 55 bar, and after he passed away, Adam and Jay kind of kept the gig going a little bit with some different guitar players, and so I did one of those nights. And besides just the emotional experience of filling the ginormous shoes, or not filling, trying to fill the ginormous shoes of Vic Juris, who was kind of a mentor and
really, I didn't know.
A friend.
Yeah.
So there was that kind of on my mind, but also on my mind was like, wow, this is a really fun trio, and I would love to record with these guys. And a few months later, Nils at Steeplechase asked me about doing a record, and like right away I was like, oh, I've got to do something with Adam and Jay. That would be great. It's the first trio record I've done, and the initial impetus for your question, I think, was about the tunes on Puzzle People, and
yeah, I mean, like everything. Yeah, I mean, also playing in trio, it's quite a heavy format for a guitar player. There have been so many bass drum guitar players, the heritage there. It's like, it's crazy. Like, how do you see yourself there?
I try. Well, I mean, I've been playing trio, as everyone has, for all guitar players are playing trio all the time, various random gigs. But yeah, I mean, I guess I kind of avoided recording in that format because I was like, kind of for that very question that you kind of enunciated right there, which is like, all right, so how am I going to contribute to this sound, which to be honest, isn't always my favorite sound. Like guitar trio can sometimes leave me like well, it can kind of be exhausting in a way.
Boring
You know,
even. Sometimes it's like,
yeah, it's just like it can be sonically a little
mm,
boring. The like orchestration of guitar trio can be very repetitive. And so you know, I guess you know, when I was asking Adam and Jay to do this, I was like, well, these guys are, you know, super interesting players. They're super experienced trio players, and this is going to be a great situation for dialogue. And, you know, with that in mind, you know, maybe this will be interesting to listen to.
yeah,
You know, with three strong voices. I mean, most trios have three strong voices, but
yeah,
you know, this particular trio I was hoping would be compelling to listen to.
yeah, definitely.
Length.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, what about the compositions that you wrote? Like, did you know you were gonna have like Jay and Adam? Like,
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
because you gave them, I think, quite a lot of space. Also, you know, like.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You nailed it. I was like thinking about. I mean, some of my earlier CDs, the writing is a little bit more involved, and
Yeah.
With this one, I was thinking, you know, I like that kind of writing, and I'll probably get back to it. But one of the things that maybe I learned from those experiences was like, this is fun, but there's not as much space as I would like for everybody to kind of contribute and really, you know, improvise. And so I was really trying to, you know, intentionally keep things somewhat open or simple, or, you know, whatever adjective I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Something that would enable people to really feel free to interact and contribute. So there's like, you know, a blues on there, and, you know, like a free tune, and the forms are all pretty straightforward and simple. And so that was like a slight departure for me. But yeah, all those tunes were written fairly close to the recording of the record.
Yeah.
Know, just with that group in mind.
Does it take you a long time to write a tune? I mean, like,
it usually really does.
Really? Oh wow. Okay.
But those ones, like, not so much.
Okay.
You know, I do feel like my best writing happens quickly.
Yeah.
You know, if I can kind of seize that initial inspiration and follow it as long as I can, it usually works out to be the best. So that's kind of what I tried to do on those tunes, like the tune Puzzle People. I mean, it probably won't surprise you to learn that I wrote that in like 10 minutes. It just kind of came out, you know. Some of the other ones I was, you know, I mean, honestly, I was a little nervous going into the date because that was so different for me. And, you know, we didn't really, you know, we recorded this in the middle of COVID. So it's not like we were gigging all the time together or anything like that. You know, we did a little rehearsal.
Yeah.
So, you know, yeah, it was a little different for me, but I really was trying to be like, all right, how can I create situations that really free up people to be themselves?
Yeah.
And that was a bit of something I think I've learned over time, that's a process that, you know, is probably, you know, everybody's known it's been cool for a long time, but it took a while to derive to it. But I mean, there's a certain safety and kind of overwriting things. And so, you know, that was cool. It kept me in my comfort zone or something. And now I'm trying to get out of that.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Like when I did, you know, with Loren, and we had a quartet with Loren and John O'Gallagher, two altos and drums, and our tunes were like, you know, like 8 pages, odd meters. Like, okay, you solo now in this like 11/8 pattern, whatever. Okay,
totally.
And then just the opening things up, like lately, even now what I'm doing also, it's like, man, that's way more fun. It's tricky sometimes, but yeah,
I mean, it's I guess when it's good, it's really good, and when it's bad, it's really bad. You know, it's like, but you know, I mean, I think there's a place for all kinds of writing. It's just kind of cool to try to mix things up a little bit based on the people you're playing with and the kind of nature of what's going on in your life at that time. And
yeah, definitely.
You know, but I also feel sounds maybe like from your experiences too, that like the older I get, the less time I have for rehearsing, the less interest I have in rehearsing.
Yeah.
You know, just sitting around and being like, all right, you do this, you do that. And you know, it's really fun to make music without talking very much, just like putting a little sketchy thing in front of people and just, you know, starting to play and going from it that way. So much funner.
It's funny when you listen to interviews like of, you know, Paul Motion or someone who just didn't want to rehearse that. Like that it like makes sense. Like, well, yeah, okay, now I get it. Actually, you know, or
yeah, I mean, you know, everything has its own place. You know, with large group.
Yeah, sure.
Writing, of course, you know, getting things really tight and together, and certain types of small group writing. But it's like, you know, probably most of the records I like are pretty spontaneously, you know, came together pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And you know, if you know, it creates the opportunity to capture, like a lot of the, you know, tunes on that record are first takes, and
yeah, sure.
You know, kind of like the first time we played through some of that music all the way. That's, I think, makes things interesting to listen to.
Yeah, I mean, especially with those two players, Adam and Jay, I guess that's like
absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
you give them anything, and it's like, yeah.
They have a lot of experience, of course, playing together and, you know, going back decades. So they have an incredible hookup and relationship, and they're just incredible players in their own right. And I'm very, very fortunate that they tolerated me and took an interest in playing with me at some point, you know, so that I could, you know, benefit from their experience.
Will you continue playing with this trio, with Exact? I mean, if those guys are available, I mean,
absolutely, yeah. I mean, we did a little bit of playing after the record came out.
Okay.
You know, I'm working on, I'm going to do another Steeplechase record like later on this year, but it's actually going to be a duo record with the pianist Gary Versace.
Oh, really? Oh, fantastic! Wow.
So,
okay.
You know, it'll be a minute, I think, before I get back to doing stuff with that trio. But I just totally love playing with those guys, and you know,
it would be a nice lineup to bring to Europe also, since Adam and Jay are both have a quite big resume already behind them, so it would be nice.
Absolutely.
To get some gigs with this trio.
Absolutely, and it would be a lot of fun to travel with those guys.
Yeah. Adam is it's hilarious. Yeah. But you mentioned writing these tunes. I wanted to ask you, like, did you intentionally, or even now, if you write music, like, do you sit down with a guitar, like, okay, I'm gonna write something, or do you like usually practice and noodle around and then you come up with a melody or riff, or like how does it go with you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I sit down. Unfortunately, you know, it's very intentional and it's very guitar oriented. So those things can, you know, just gonna put it out there, those are in a way weaknesses. You know, it's like relying on the, you know, your instrument can be such a crutch in some ways, and it can force you into certain directions. And this is all well-known information. You know, people, you know, guitar players write on the piano, or, you know, just write away from your instrument. Yeah, like I sort of sit down and I'm like, all right, it's time to get to work. And I'm one of those people that kind of, you know, every now and then, like, inspiration strikes, and I'm like, wow, that was so generous of the world to let me, you know. But generally speaking, like, it's all kind of like a process of routine and, you know, intention, and, you know, maintaining certain habits. For writing, I kind of have to I have to sort of get my writing chops back if I haven't been writing that much, you know. And you know, I'm like a very I edit way too much. You know, that stuff I didn't edit that much, but my earlier writing, I would just edit, you know. And that was, you know, that can be very time consuming. The other thing I'll say about writing is, like, it's like I have like about an hour to 40 minutes of like good writing, and then it just gets weird. You know, it just like, you know, after that, almost 90% of the time, everything I write after an hour of writing, I'm going to end up throwing out.
Yeah.
It gets like too self-conscious or something. So even if I'm trying to like write something that's more detailed and involved, like I still like, I might be able to get like a morning and an evening session going on, but it's not like I can really sit down and write productively for 4,
Yeah, me neither. Yeah.
8 hours, like, like a real composer would,
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know what they do.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just kind of what I've realized over time. Just like got to go with that initial idea and try to see it through. Hopefully in that amount of time I can get pretty far, but sometimes it's a bar.
Yeah, I know. I have like in Sibelius like a map of hundreds of files that are like 6 bars and 4 bars, and I'm like,
yeah,
I get to them and I'm like, man, I'm still stuck. I don't know, maybe it sucks, the idea,
Yeah, I mean, like talking to composer friends, and I know you talk to lots of great composers, like a lot of people talk about like, approach your composition with like a plan, and this is,
yeah,
I took a little bit of some composing lessons at one point, and that was kind of what I was taught, and it seemed like such a logical and great idea, but actually that doesn't work for me either. Maybe again, it's a lifetime process. Maybe I'll cycle back to that at some point and be a, play by the rules a little better. But when I compose with a plan, my composing plans really suck, I guess, and so I really have to like follow like it's kind of like the tune tells me where it wants to go.
Yeah.
Not so much the plan. The plan is, if it always gets thrown out anyway, so whatever.
Yeah, it's heavy.
That seems like that could be a way to be more productive.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. What if you do you have this moment where when you, I mean, that I have this, like when you write something and you get the idea, you repeat it yourself again? How do you prevent, if you have that, like,
oh yeah,
how do you prevent that?
I totally do that. I mean, it goes back to like before, I mean, now I use like my laptop. I just kind of record myself while I'm writing, and I listen back to it, and that's really like super helpful, just to like close my eyes and listen to it. Then I can tell, like, is this something I'm okay with, or is this, not what I'm really going for? And I used to be, before I was surrounded by technological devices, it used to be just like a tape player. I used tape players for practicing all kinds of different ways. Then it was like mini discs for a little while, and then it's like voice memos on my phone, and GarageBand or Logic files or something. Yeah, but yeah, that's like a really good, like I'll write, then I come back to it later and I just like listen to what I wrote, and then that really is like a great way of checking in with, is this something I'm cool with or not? Yeah,
it's heavy, man. It's so heavy, really. Sometimes I play something and I'm like, oh man, like some fingerstyle 11/8 pattern or something. Wow, that's so cool. And I check it out. I'm like, man, it sounds the same as the other one, except it's in E major, not in C or whatever. It's like,
I mean, that's I guess that's kind of a good thing though, because you're like kind of like getting all that stuff out of your ears and out of your system, and in a lot of ways, I feel like like a composition, it can be the most fun when you think of it in terms of like, it doesn't really matter what my initial materials are. It's like, what can I kind of do with them? And if I can get in that headspace, and where it's almost a little bit more like a craft based on somewhat arbitrary materials, then I can really kind of get going too a little bit. The main thing is just like, don't fall in love with it too early.
No, everyone says that. Yeah.
Because that will paralyze you.
Definitely.
Like, oh man, these first 3 bars are amazing, and
then you're stuck.
Nothing will ever rise to the. Well, it's just weird to hear 3 bars and think they're that. How good can 3 bars be, anyways?
Yeah, true. but then you play like a Paul Motion tune, you know, like we had a session the other day, and you know the tune Etude, like Paul
I
Motion.
think so. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like the entire time it's like a D kind of pedal going on, and it's like in minor, D minor, and he just puts an F sharp on it or something like that, which is completely out of.
yes,
And it works. It's like,
yes.
man,
Yeah,
and
I
it's
mean,
so simple, the melody.
I love that kind of writing so much.
Yeah, like
I
3
love his
bars or
writing.
yeah.
Yeah, it's you know, it's very he, you know, he's so good at creating like, you know, very evocative pieces in like 3 notes. You're like,
Yeah.
wow, this is gonna, like, you kind of like, I get it, and this is gonna be great, and I'm in, you know.
Yeah.
So
No, I wanted
know,
to say it can be 3 bars. So, like, you know.
then I guess in that case it can be 3 bars. Yeah. Well, you know, cool.
Yeah.
I was wrong.
No. But I wanted to ask you like about composition. You did amazing record with Monder, right? With band Monder. Did you guys ever talk about composition with him? Like, I mean, you know, no? Oh, okay.
No, I mean, well, I might have tried a few times. I mean, have you interviewed Ben?
Yeah, I did. It was
yeah. So, you know, like I definitely felt like that writing on there was inspired by some of his music, and so I like really wanted to tell him that, and I did, and he was like, oh, you know, I don't think he necessarily saw it that way, or maybe, you know, maybe he did. I'm not totally sure. But you know, I didn't necessarily write that stuff with him in mind. I kind of wrote that stuff just kind of like, I felt like I had certain kind of traps compositionally that I've been getting into at that time in my life, and so I was like, all right, let's, you know, kind of work on that a little bit.
No, it's fantastic tunes you wrote. Those like,
Thank
I
you,
mean,
thank
it's
you.
the Richter and that polytune, and it's
Yeah,
like,
I mean, like,
really
yeah,
complex stuff also. And
it is. And so then after I wrote it, I was like, well, this is some of these kind of like, there's some stuff where it's like very arpeggiated guitar textures kind of layered on top of each other, and that's something that, you know, Ben is so amazing at kind of writing in that style. I mean, it's a very guitaristic style. Many people have approached doing stuff like that. I think Ben has really taken it to a, you know, to the, you know, to the stars, to the universe, whatever, you know. So after I wrote all this stuff, I was like, well, I already said I kind of hate rehearsing, so I was like, you know, it would be great if I could do it with Ben, because first of all, I know he's got no time, you know, to rehearse, but I also know that he'll like play this great, you know, right off the bat. And, you know, I was right. He learned it very quickly, and it was pretty comfortable getting things together with him.
Yeah. Did you guys ever play before together, or?
Yeah, we've played just like really random gigs around Brooklyn, where like, you know, kind of variety of different stuff, you know, like little session type of things, or like, you know, just kind of random gigs where we're playing together, which were great experiences for me. I mean, Ben is someone I've been listening to since I was you know, much younger, and, you know, going to school to study music, and so to eventually, you know, play with him and get to know him a little bit has been, you know, a great experience for me.
Yeah, I think he's so important for our generation of guitarists. Like, you know, he completely opened the world of, you know, with these arpeggios and distorted and what you can play, and it's like really.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And yeah, just had a huge influence on our generation. I totally agree. And just the kind of sound world that he's created, and the emotional content of that world, it's really a powerful influence on so many guitar players. And you know, he's one of those you know, brilliant guitar players too, that's like, I don't think anyone can really copy it either. It's so evolved in his way of playing that it's just, he's going to be one of those figures where it's his thing.
It's like Alan Holdsworth, but a different style, kind of.
Yeah, that's exactly who I would think of as being another person. It's just like in the Holdsworth style, there's Holdsworth, and I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. I bought both of these composition books that he released, and it's just, you take a tune like Oceana or whatever, and it's like 37 pages of constantly changing. And I struggle with 12 bars, not 12, 4 bars. I'm like, man, okay.
Yeah, I totally had the same experience, man. I was like, I don't know, I don't own those books. I don't know how maybe I was borrowing a book, from someone. I remember just like being like, all right, let's, I love these things. Let's like check them out. And like, I like played the first chord. And
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
How? And I was like, damn, this is like, it's really hard.
It's really hard. Yeah.
I mean, it sounds hard, but it's might be, it's still really hard. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he said himself like that some tunes he can play like once, or in the morning when he's like really warmed up. That's it, because it's so much endurance, intensity, and endurance and everything.
The intensity is really something.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it's another. It's incredible. What a like incredible legacy of music and guitar playing he's creating.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I spoke to some guys who played like rhythm sections with him, and just for me that's also puzzling, to get a tune of 30 pages and just like make music. Like Jim Black or Ted Poor or whoever, like those guys just eat those tunes, and it's incredible how they do that, actually, especially drummers. It's like
no, they add so much drama, another layer of drama to things, and the like dynamics and interpretation that goes into that is it's really, really awesome.
Yeah. But I wanted to ask you, Nate, like you mentioned Monder, of course, being important for our generation, but like who are the guys that influenced you, I guess, like early 90s, or like when was it, like 90s. This beginning of jazz? When did that happen?
The early 90s.
Yeah, Scofield, I guess, right?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, Scofield was huge for me and still is to this day. I'm just, I'm such a huge fan of his playing, and he was. I grew up around the New England area that we were just talking about. I when I was in high school, I was going to school in New Hampshire, and so I would drive down to Boston, and I saw like a bunch of shows of the Scofield group with Lovano,
yeah.
And it really kind of was life-changing for me. I just that band's kind of introduced me to a little bit of free playing, or kind of open, like free bop or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that was new to me, being at like a high school, jazz guitar player or whatever. So Scofield was a huge one. Like that kind of generation, Scofield, Matheny, and Frizzell were like these huge figures as a young player. And those were the figures that kind of got me out of like the blues and rock that I kind of started off with. I think I'm telling a story here that's very common among guitar players.
It's like I'm listening to myself, because
I mean, and so and then later, as I got a little older, like I was always a big Wes Montgomery fan, but and a big Jim Hall fan, but as I kind of grew out of those initial idols and started going back and listening to their influences, Jim Hall and Wes Montgomery were really huge. I transcribed a lot of Wes Montgomery.
Oh really? Oh wow.
And that's kind of so that's something actually I kind of return to kind of cyclically. It's just so I just love the time feel. That's really the thing that I come back to, is just the time for me feel is just like the best, and the rhythmic ideas, and there's a lot of really cool kind of contemporary harmonic ideas that are in there too.
So
a very rich thing to come back to. Jim Hall is just like, you know, the spiritual leader of creativity on the guitar to me. You know, it's just like he's played with so many great musicians and contributed this incredible voice to so many recordings. You know, it's as with many people, it's really important to me to hear what a guitar player as great as Jim Hall sounds like playing with Sonny Rollins and playing with Art Farmer and playing with Bill Evans and all these, you know, great non-guitar players. To hear how guitar can fit into that is really special. And then that he did it with such creativity and such commitment to a certain type of creativity. You know, I think it sets the bar incredibly high, and it's something that I think that I return to all the time for inspiration. Yeah, especially his comping. I mean, like I transcribed like lots of his compings, you know, with Sonny, like just those single lines and the intervals. It's just like, man, you know, that's so beautiful. Yeah, and I love like all that strumming comping he does too. That's you know, one of my favorite Jim Hall recordings is there's this like Live at the North Sea with Bob Brookmeyer duo, and it's like Jim just goes nuts on that one, and just the kind of rhythmic comping and playing things in time and out of time and in different keys, getting kind of abstract at times. It's the comping on that one really, and the comping on the Bill Evans record. Records. That's beautiful. Yeah. Really, really, I mean, incredible. Yeah. Incredible. Yeah. So much heritage with there that he left, you know, that's what, I always keep returning to those also, like just listening and I mean, since then I guess I keep always working backwards, you know, like I never really listened to Django that much when I was me neither. Yeah. And so but I really have enjoyed getting into him more in the past 10 years or so. What an incredible improviser. Just going from idea to idea, and incredible rhythm, incredible sound and inflections, never gets boring. And of course Charlie Christian is another huge inspiration. And the stuff that I got into in the last couple of years, I started transcribing a lot of like country guitar players, like really? Atkins and Jerry Reed, and and Garland, and some more modern country guitar players, and that really opened me up a little bit to some of the techniques that are very guitaristic within that idiom. That's been really helpful for me lately, just to kind of like all the influences I'm talking about right now are things that we share and so many other guitar players share. Yes, kind of the canon of guitar, it's, or at least it's one of them. There are a lot of paths, but I know this one is pretty well trodden, and so it's been kind of important. It's for me to kind of go like, all right, what do I like that I can kind of dig into that is more specific to that is less common with other people that share these same influences. And so that's been kind of productive for me. Again, I don't want to sound like I'm made this like incredible discovery. There's so many great guitar players. No, but I know what you mean. Yeah. That know that lineage very well, and it's, sometimes some people that I wouldn't have think would know that lineage well know it extremely well, and so it's another path that I think a lot of people are familiar with, but it's been very inspiring for me, especially a lot of jazz guitar players. Again, it sounds like you probably are similar to me in this. Like I took a lot of inspiration from non-guitar players too. Oh, me? Yeah, sure. Yeah, probably like 20 years there where I was just like, ew, guitar. I just wanted to listen to like Miles Davis and John Coltrane, Sonny Rollins, all these greats. And then at some point I was like, maybe I should check out the guitar a little more, and that's kind of when I got into country guitar, because I was like, let's get into something where it's not really pedals but lots of sounds and textures created just from a guitar.
That's a good one to check out for me now. You got me an idea now.
Yeah, check it out.
Really,
I mean,
seriously, yeah.
You know, there's a lot of like another thing, like you know, for jazz guitar, like sometimes we really develop the left hand a lot.
Yeah,
I certainly
yeah.
kind of focus.
Oh, me too. Yeah, legato lines and yeah.
And I was like, oh, the right hand, like just pluck the strings.
Yeah.
Was a really bad idea. Don't do that, anyone. But you know, there's a lot of like cool hybrid picking, picking stuff that that is just so you know, I didn't mention Danny Gatton. He's like incredible, you know,
so underrated.
incredible right hand technique and textures that he gets into. And Lenny Breaux's another big one too.
Yeah.
He has the country influence, but he's not really maybe as known for that. But he's just an incredible orchestrator on the guitar.
Yeah.
And so those are a lot of different figures that have been important to me.
I wanted to ask you about, I've read, you know, one of my biggest heroes, you kind of mentioned Matheny, of course, Frizzell and Schofield, like, is John Abercrombie. You know, I've transcribed so much of stuff by his.
Absolutely,
music.
yeah. Sorry,
and you studied with him, right?
I did.
Read, like,
yes,
how was that like?
Well, it was really great. It came at a really good time for me. I was just kind of progressing at the time from getting more familiar with, you know, like the kind of standard jazz harmony up through like Wayne Shorter, kind of just getting into that. And studying with John, like we just basically, he would just, you know, play his tunes with me.
Wow, man.
I would show up and he would have some lead sheets and we would play through them, and you know his music, and it was just harmonically something I wasn't prepared for at all. And that was kind of like, you know, boot camp for me for dealing with tried over bass structures, and kind of irregular phrasing, and so many of the elements of his music that we all love.
Yeah.
And he made a couple comments to me that really like stuck with me too. Like I remember, you know, bringing him a tune. So that, you know, I studied with him while I was going to school at New England Conservatory. So I was taking classes at the time.
Beautiful.
I remember bringing in a tune that I wrote for a class. And this is like such a simple point, but, you know, I was kind of proud of the tune, and I brought it to him and he was like, oh, that's nice, but it sounds like you wrote it for a class. I was like, damn, you know, like, yeah, like, you know, you can really hear the intention here, can't you? And, you know, so in a way, that kind of thing I was talking about earlier about how I'm trying to like not to write with too much of an agenda, you know, kind of came from that comment, because, you know, when I listen to John's music, it just sounds so pure. You know, it just sounds such like a pure expression of this incredible musical personality. And of course that is so compelling and it touches so many people because it's pure. And so, you know, just to hear him kind of say that, I was like, wow, that really, really affected me. I would bring in a couple of my tunes. You know, I was just starting to write at that time, play through them with him a little bit, and his feedback was super helpful for me at that time. So I feel very lucky to have, you know, been exposed to you know, his personality, you know, along with his music. You know, it made a big impact on me.
Did you talk like about, you know, I don't know, Ralph's Piano Waltz, like how he approaches a tune like that, like solo wise, or let's say?
Well, it was kind of interesting, man. I would always be like, you know, like, hey man, you know what? Because I really was like, what are these scales that you play on these things? And he was like, maybe a little, I don't know if he really thought of it that way, or he certainly wasn't just like, all right, here you go, Lydian augmented, or, you know, he wasn't straightforward like that. He was, you know, like a little more, the thing that I remember him talking about a bunch was like tunes like that he like wrote at the piano, I think. And so he talked a lot about, you know, writing at the piano. And so that was another, you know, an example of someone that kind of got me thinking like, okay, maybe this like writing at the guitar thing could have some problems. Of course, I've continued to write at the guitar. You know, sometimes I take good advice and then I'm like, well, what would happen if I didn't take that good advice? That's stupid. But anyways, I write at the guitar. I'm going to see how far I can go with that. or I can see how far I can
Yeah, how far we sink, right?
Yeah, it wasn't at that time. You know, I was going to school in Boston, and Mick Goodrick was also teaching in Boston at that time. Another guitar player I hadn't mentioned yet, who was, you know, a big influence on me.
He was also your teacher, or?
I took one lesson with him.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of another funny story. But I remember going to see him, and he was like, "What do you want to talk about?" And I was like, "Well, I'm, you know, trying to learn these tunes with John Abercrombie, and, you know, like, can you just tell me about these chords?" And he was the guy who was like, "This is what you do." You know, he was very like, at that point I kind of figured it out, but he gave me like I think I needed a little like confirmation that I hadn't gone off the wrong path. So that was like, you know, in 10 minutes he kind of got me kind of straightened out on that. And you know, in that lesson, have you ever like looked at that book that he wrote that was like all these crazy voice? It's like a
Advancing Guitarist, or?
No, that I love that book.
Yeah, I mean, that's the Bible, right?
Yeah, that's the Bible. But he's got this other book or a series of books that are like all these voice leadings.
Yeah, I didn't understand why I was, because it was just like too much information. It's kind of like I checked.
I know. Well, he gave me like a handwritten photocopy, like, you know, of that book like this, and he was like, you know, just go check this out for a little while and come back when you're kind of bored of that, you know. And I never really got bored of that. So, you know, and, you know, I was taking, you know, going to school, you get so many classes, so many lessons, and, you know, it was already very clear to me that I wasn't able to absorb all the information that I was being exposed to, you know, and it was just, you know, kind of overwhelming. So I was like, you know, cool. I got exposed to a little bit of his way of talking about things. I'm so glad to have met him. Right now, I think he's kind of ill, so that might have turned out to be my, you know, the extent of my encounter with him. So I hold that very dear.
Yeah, he was also, I mean, of course, Mick, for our generation again, like that book, I think, you know.
Yeah, that book, it's
Advancing Guitarist, like, changed my life, especially the last 20 pages where it has the text.
Yeah, man, I always talk about that with people too. You know, someone recently mentioned that, like, you know, he wrote that book, I think when he was like in his early 40s. You know, like, I'm in my mid 40s. And like, I'm like, you mean he wrote that, like, you know, he was thinking about things on that level with those, you know, those last 20 pages where he's like kind of getting philosophical, like he was there in his 40s. Damn. You know, just the whole time, like, reading that book, I'm like, wow, I'm like reading the words of Yoda.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, this is just like, you know, you want a great wisdom, and I'm like, right, but he was, you know, he was a human being too, and he wrote that at a specific time of his life when he wasn't that old.
Yeah,
which, you know, adds a whole nother layer.
Scary. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I love those. I still now tell to the students, like, when you get stale and stuff like that, those, you know, ideas what to do, and
just like go feed the birds.
Go cry. I don't know, stop playing, or I don't know, practice more.
It's the most real book on, you know, maybe not the superlatives are so.
No, but yeah, I know what you mean.
It's very real. It's like it's a book about music, but it also kind of has a philosophy of learning embedded within it.
Yeah.
You know, you have to dig into this book. It's not just all right there. It's really an element of that book that I find so interesting, that like the form of it kind of fits the content of it.
Yeah. I mean, the musical content, of course, it's amazing, but you kind of get to chew through the scales and, you know, the voicings and the idea of intervals. But just the last 20 pages, for me, that's like, I still talk with students about that. Like, you know, when you play in front of, I don't know, 5 girls, it's way different than if I play in front of you or some other guitarist. You know, you're gonna act completely differently, and it's so true. It's amazing. All these things.
It opens up, you know, I encountered that book when I was very young, but it you know, definitely opened up my mind to like the inner game, you know, of jazz guitar, or you know, really music in a broader sense too.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to ask you, Nate, one thing. You know, I have you on so many albums. Like since 2010, you've like the players of your generation. You know, Andrew Radvan, Eric Rasmussen, like all these kind of almost under the radar players in my eyes, but who are amazing. And you know, Loren and Gary Ursay. And but how was your experience? You know, after finishing university, when you came to New York, I guess early 2000s. How did that go for you? You know, like I speak many times to players about the early 80s or early 70s, and it's this completely other romantic world that I hear about. But like,
yeah, the early 2000s, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to really emphasize that too much
but
for you.
How was that like for you when you came to New York?
I mean, at this point, I'm just grateful that I had that experience and was able to do it. You know, it's living in New York is so hard, and it's getting, you know, financially harder and harder. And so, you know, I think around the time I was doing that, I remember older musicians kind of thinking like, wow, you're crazy. Like, you know, this is so hard here. And that's kind of how I feel now. But, you know, younger musicians are going there and thriving. Of course,
sure.
it continues. I mean, to be totally honest with you, I never really thought I was going to move to New York. I never had that ambition. I was like, to think that if you could have told young me that I would go on and play at Smalls at some point in my life, one time, I would have just been beside myself with joy. So I feel so grateful to have had those experiences. The only reason I really moved to New York is I reached a point where it was like all my friends had moved to New York. And so I was like, well, I could be alone somewhere not as cool as New York, or I could move someplace incredibly cool and inspiring like New York and kind of be reunited with a lot of my friends. And so I spent, you know, a year kind of going back and forth between Boston and New York, which was great. I feel so lucky to have been able to do that, because by the time I actually moved to New York, I'd already, you know, you mentioned Eric Rasmussen. He was, you know, one of the first friends I had in New York. And so, and I think probably one of the first people to hire me in New York.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. I love those Tristano records, man. That's such amazing music. Really,
yeah, that was so hard to get.
So heavy, also. I mean, really heavy. Yeah.
Yeah. But that was a really fun project. But yeah, so I mean, by the time I finally moved to New York, I was able to hook up with some musicians that had some gigs, and I was able to play some sessions kind of right away. And I feel grateful that it wasn't too rough at the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, you know, I just played a lot of sessions in those early days. You know, I played sessions like it was my job. I had like one tour going on at that time, and that kind of like kept me financially solvent for a few months. And I just played sessions like it was my job. And you know, I don't know, maybe every day. I just remember every day I was living in Queens, in Astoria, and just every day I was getting on the BQE to go to Brooklyn. And I still, like, those three letters B, Q, and E still traumatize me from that time. You have to be young to deal with that much traffic.
Oh, sure.
I can't do it anymore.
Sure.
But yeah, those were my early days in New York. That's a time that you know, now I look back on with so much fondness. You know, it's so fun to be young and not know what you're doing, and learn so much in such a, you know, in a short amount of time.
Yeah, definitely. How did I mentioned it before, the Big Eyes? How did that one happen?
Yeah, that was, I guess, you know, I guess at some point, just like this, I was like, all right, I have to make a record, you know, like it's time. I always enjoyed writing, but, you know, like, you know, seeing things through to making a recording, you know, you learn so much. And then also people learn about your own music that way. So just seemed kind of like a necessary step that I was somewhat hesitant to take. And, you know, I hired people that I was playing with a lot at that time. You know, Ted Poor was on drums on that one, and Loren is on saxophone. So those guys were kind of part of Bad Touch, this group that I was playing with at the time. and Pete Rende plays keyboards on it, and Matt Pavolka plays bass. Those guys play together a lot, and I played with them a bunch. And so it's just kind of like a natural outgrowth out of the people that I was playing with at that time, and the kind of tunes that I was writing at that time, and just kind of a, I guess, snapshot of my development at that moment.
Was it easy for you, like making like band leading can, or if you look at yourself now, like how have you evolved as a band leader? I mean, like in these terms.
Well, I think I'm a more comfortable band leader inside. I don't know if I've ever been like a very controlling sort of band leader. I've just always kind of my philosophy has always been pretty much like, these, I'm the players that I'm working with because I want to get their contributions and see where they take things. So that's been the philosophy hasn't really changed. I think just my maturity level with able to, interact with other people dealing with that philosophy has improved over time.
Yeah.
But, making that record was incredibly fun. And I learned a lot from doing it. And I haven't listened to it for a long time.
No, I listened to this week.
Check it out.
It's still, it sounds really modern still now. It's like the tunes are beautiful. And
thank you.
I mean, the band is burning. You and Loren, I love how you connected. I mean, even in Bad Touch, like when did you guys start playing with Loren actually?
Again, pretty soon after I moved to New York.
Oh, okay.
I was living in Astoria, and he was living in Astoria at the time, and there was like a rehearsal space in Astoria that a lot of people were playing at, and he was living above it, and I think I did some playing with him at that rehearsal space, and he hired me, kind of out of the blue for a gig. And I remember, his music is pretty hard, and I remember playing his music and being like, wow, this guy's never going to call me again. It was great to meet Loren. But yeah, I guess, it worked out okay, maybe that first time. And we just became very close friends. I consider him one of my closest friends. And we played a lot at that time. And we had like a kind of interactive thing that we got into a lot. I mean, Loren is great at doing that in general. And we were playing in this band, Bad Touch, with Gary Versace on organ. He's so great at interacting with people and kind of creating a sort of conversational type of group soloing thing, or for lack of a better term. And so I got some experience with that from those players. I haven't played with Loren for a while now, and so I have to get back to that at some point.
Montana.
I know. He's in Montana, or he was living in, as I'm sure you know, in Germany for a minute there. And
in between,
But we stay in touch all the time. Where it be.
It would be nice to see some more of you guys together, actually.
Yeah,
like
he's been playing a lot of tenor lately, actually.
Oh, really? So I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, he did a trio record this summer, and I think he's playing like tenor and soprano on the whole thing.
Really? Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
check it out.
He played little tenor on this other record of mine called Morphoses.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's recorded that much on soprano, and his soprano playing is really unbelievable.
Yeah, he's a monster player. I mean,
he is incredibly talented guy.
Yeah. Otherwise, Nate, I just wanted to ask you, not to take too much of your time. Like you mentioned a duo record with Gary, but otherwise, what are the plans, writing wise or leading wise or sideman wise, like for you the next?
Yeah, I mean the other thing that I've been doing somewhat anonymously is I've been like trying to I've been doing a lot of home recording. It's kind of like a COVID project that started, and so I started like recording kind of instrumental guitar music that I've been like licensing for TV shows and stuff like that.
Okay.
So,
wow.
So it's kind of like getting paid to learn. I'm really, like,
yeah, sure.
I started off at basically at ground zero, but I've been learning a lot about using Logic and recording at home, and kind of having this like sort of commercial outlet for it has enabled it to be like it's an incredible time, possibly waster. It's an incredible time investment, and being able to make a little bit of money doing it has enabled that to kind of be a sensible thing to do.
Well, that's a good way to learn. I mean, how to do these things, especially nowadays financially.
Yeah.
When speaking of jazz, like making albums or stuff,
yeah, I mean,
that you mix yourself and even master it and stuff. I think it's nice to learn that nowadays.
It's really nice to learn that, and I've been learning a lot about like sequencing and synthesis and so on. So at some point I can imagine like a kind of home produced project coming out of that. But I've been writing in so many different styles for that kind of thing that I'm like, man, I don't even know where to begin. With that
Nate Radley country album. That's first one.
Well, that's definitely going to happen at some point. That's definitely going to happen. I have a bunch of tunes. Well, I started playing before the pandemic in a trio with Tony Scher on bass and either Mark Ferber on drums or Allison Miller on drums.
Oh man, fantastic.
And so I have kind of like a book of more rootsy country-ish tunes that I've written.
Beautiful.
It's kind of old at this point. I sometimes feel like I'm not good enough to play the tunes that I've written, so I'm really taking my time to like get to rise up to maybe be able to interpret these tunes somewhat adequately. But yeah, there'll be something kind of more with a lot more string bending coming up.
Yeah, fantastic. That's beautiful. Looking forward to that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hope there's one person. Gotta start somewhere.
Yeah, well, it's something, but cool.
Yeah, so those are the kind of things that I'm
fantastic.
coming up.
Super.
Yeah,
cool, Nate.
Cool, man.
I'll leave you a nice Wednesday. So
okay, right on, man.
And thanks for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure
so much fun
talking with you, man.
Jazz.